Now I've stopped to check my work to see how it's going, and again you can see the slant. Isn't that cool how it's going? It's just totally slanting off to the right there. So I'm going to check this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one counts as my 5th row of bumps, and that was fine for down here with the white, because we're gonna, when we bind it off, we're gonna add in a row there. But for the other 2 colors, we want to see 6 of those. So I'm gonna have to do 1 more row. And remember, so looking at it here, on the right side, we start with a slip 1, and then we're gonna knit front and back. So I'm slipping in here, bring the yarn around between. We're gonna knit to the front, and then before we end, before we go on to the next one, slip it off, knit into the back and knit across. Oh, look at that, 3 stitches from the end. We're gonna knit 2 together, knit that last one. I have to get back to the beginning of the front side again. Get your yarn straightened out. Remember this side, start with that slip 1 again. As I lose my yarn, bring your yarn around the back. Remember on the wrong side, you start with a knit 2 together after that slip stitch. And we're going to knit front and back on the end of this row. I'll meet you over there. Okay, so I'm at my last stitch. I'm going to knit front and then knit back and knit that last one. Okay, now if I check it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I've got my 6 ridges. Even if the top one looks a little skinny, it's going to get completed by knitting this next row. It's going to make it all look good. So I'm going to cut a little bit of a tail off, leave myself with enough yarn to sew it in later, and I'm going to grab my lighter yellow yarn. And remember, the first row of this, no fancy stitches. Just knit straight across to get your new yarn on. So again, I'm going to make sure I've got a little bit of a tail, and I'm going to come in and just start knitting. Knit straight across. You can go back and look what we did with the darker yellow yarn if you want to see. I'll meet you once I have 6 of these. I think I've gotten there, right? The lighter one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those bumps count as my 6, so it means I've got my 12 rows. As I mentioned before, with the white, we had 10 rows. With your second color, my dark yellow, we want 12 rows, which is going to be 6 rows of those bumps. And up here, another 12 rows. So 6 rows of these bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So again, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a tail. I can get all this other stuff out of here. Now, we're going to do a 3 needle bind off, which really it's called Kichener stitch, but this one is going to be a grafting Kichener stitch. There's regular Kicheners and there's grafting, because this stitch is what we call grafting. So it's time to release these stitches back here at the beginning on that waste yarn and do what's called a 3 needle bind off using Kichener's stitch. I'm going to be doing garter Kichener stitch as opposed to a regular one, because all these bumps I keep talking about as we're doing our scrubby here, the bumps show up because we're knitting every row. It's called a garter stitch as opposed to a stockinette stitch, and we want what seams them to also look like those bumps. It's going to create the last row of this white where we started with. So we need to get these stitches onto this needle, but they need to be, the needles need to be facing the same way. Now if you remember back when I put these stitches onto the needle, I gave myself this little loop here to remind me of which way it's got to come off this direction. Now if I just stuck them on this needle, they'd go on this way, and we'd have a problem because the needles wouldn't be facing the same way. It's kind of hard to show you when this gets all wibbly wobbly, but it would go on this way, and that's not going to work. You need to have the needles pointing in the same direction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to slide this back. I'm actually going to put them on this needle where all my work was. I'm going to slide them onto this needle, release them, and we could say onto this needle, and then I'm going to slip them over to this needle, as my yarn gets stuck, to this needle. So let me show you what I'm going to do. I will take out this, which let me know what side I was going on, and I'm going to come around here, and I didn't pull this tight on purpose so I can get the end out. I've tried just leaving this loop really big without pulling the end through before, and it's come undone while I've been working, and it's been very annoying. So see that loop there? Stick my needle in, I'm going to yank this, and it's going to release. I'm going to find the next one. I'm going to stick my needle. That's why it's nice to have waste yarn that is a different color than the yarn you're working with, so that you can see which is which. You also can do this. If you're really gentle, you pull that out and then find the hole and stick your needle in. I'll do that again because the yarn's kind of in the way. You can pull it out first and then just be really gentle and stick your needle in. If you're worried about losing that stitch though, like I was showing you before, I'll try to bring it a little closer to the camera here if I can. Stick your needle through that loop that your waste yarn's going through, and then pull your waste yarn out. As long as the needle is only in the waste yarn, as long as it's only in the yarn you were working with and not catching your waste yarn, see that? You should be fine. And you just keep going all the way across. Okay, I'm down to the last little bit that this is around, and if I slip under this guy right here and pull it out. But right now, things are facing the wrong way. I could just slide this up on this needle. Again, I'm using the circulars, but I don't want to because I want to start with all this, where'd it go? I want to start with all the scrap yarn, but this needs to be at a needle point for me to do that. So I'm going to slip all of these over to my other needle. Now if you're using straight needles, you could have just squished this back on the straight needle, or you can use a third needle to get that over. I realized, I think I said 3 needle bind off in the beginning. We are doing Kichener's, we're not doing 3 needle. Silly me. Kichener's. 3 needle bind off is something else altogether. It's a really cool seam, but we want something that is more hidden in this. So it's really only 2 needles. If I can, I'll voice over that before. We'll see. Okay, so now I know I've got a lot of ends here. I don't like weaving those in until I've done this bind off, which is the reason why I haven't yet. I'll show you that in a minute. So now I've got my 2 needles. They're facing the right, they're facing the same way together. Each has a set of stitches on them. See? Each has a set of stitches and they're right up near each other. So here's what we're going to do. I've got my long tail for my cast on from the first row I worked, sitting here, threaded through my needle. Okay, for the garter stitch Kichener's bind off, you're going to go through the first needle on the front, the first loop on the front needle, as if you're purling it, so that's back to front. And we're going to pull it through. Then you're going to go back and do the same thing on the back needle, but just the first loop on the back needle. I like working under the needles. You can go over if you want. Just make sure you're not getting caught up like that. Okay, haven't removed anything off of either needle yet. Gonna come back to the front needle. I'm gonna knit, go through as if to knit. So that's front to back. Then I will slide it off. I've gone through it twice. That means it can come off. And before I pull through, I'm also gonna go through the next needle as if to purl. It just cuts down how many times I have to go through if I do them both at the same time. Now I'm going to go back here, the next loop. That loop you already went through as if to purl. Now I'm going to go through it as if to knit, front to back, slip it off, go through the loop right next to it as if to purl, and pull it forward. Being careful not to go under your loops. Under that loose loop that was there. I'm going under the needle, but I'm keeping things from crossing over too much. Okay, I'm going to come back to the front. I'm going to go in as if to knit. This is one I've already gone through, right? So with the garter Kichener, the second time you go through, you go as if to knit, and that's when it comes off the needle. And you go through the next loop as if to purl. Snug it up. At this point, coming back here, you want these as snug as you can make them. Don't yank them real tight, but if you don't get them snug, you'll see it in the end. Snug is different than tight. Okay, now I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go through this back loop as if to knit. I'm going to slip it off. I'm going to go through the next loop as if, ooh, we almost lost that. That'll happen. Just slide it back on. Going to go through the next loop as if to purl, and notice this is not getting caught up in anything else. I'm just coming straight forward so I can pull it. I'm going to snug it up. Going to come to the front. So you're going to alternate front and back, but you're doing the same thing on each needle. So come to the front needle. This one as if to knit and slide off. The next loop as if to purl, and pull it tight. Snug tight. Just did the front, so now I'm going to go to the back. Go through this one as if to knit, slide it off. Next one as if to purl. Be careful not to catch it on the front stuff. Just ease it forward and yank it up. You're going to do that all the way across. Okay, coming back to you with only a few stitches left. Now if you take a look at how it's going so far, we have a nice extra row of bumps in here, which makes it look a little more balanced with the rest. So, I'm on the back here. You can see it's already gone in once here. So I'm going to slide these up again. Remember, you go in as if to knit, slide it off. Come here as if to purl. Cinch it up. Go into the back one as if to knit, slide it off. Get that under here a little bit. Take that one as if to purl, but don't get too confused with the stuff in the front one. Okay. Knit, slide off, purl. We're coming to the end here. Still have a few more back here. Sometimes they don't come out as evenly as I'd like. I'm gonna knit and purl. Usually you hope it's all going to be even in the end, especially if you have the same number of stitches. Sometimes the wonky things, when they happen, you just fix them as you can. I'm going to come through this guy and knit this one as well. And any weird stuff on the ends with these scrubbies is kind of nice because it's all going to get tied together anyway. So I'll pull through this last guy. The ends we're not going to see so much, so we don't have to worry about this. That's going to disappear.